In the dimly lit study of Niccolò Machiavelli, surrounded by manuscripts and the echoes of political turmoil that had shaped Renaissance Italy, a profound truth emerged from years of observation and analysis of human nature and power dynamics. The philosopher's quill moved across parchment as he contemplated a principle that would transcend centuries. True power lies not in external dominance over others, but in the complete mastery of oneself through self-sufficiency. This understanding would become the cornerstone of his political philosophy, extending far beyond the corridors of palaces and into the very essence of human existence. The concept of self-sufficiency as power represents more than mere independence. It embodies the transformation of vulnerability into strength, dependency into autonomy, and weakness into an unassailable fortress of personal sovereignty. When an individual achieves genuine self-sufficiency, they create something invaluable in a world where most people remain dependent on external validation, resources, and circumstances. This independence becomes their greatest asset, their most powerful weapon, and their ultimate protection against the machinations of those who would seek to control or destroy them. Throughout history, those who have achieved lasting influence and security have invariably been those who first conquered their own limitations, fears, and dependencies. They understood that external enemies can only exploit weaknesses that already exist within. A man who has destroyed his weak self, his need for approval, his fear of isolation, his dependence on others for survival or happiness, has eliminated the very foundations upon which others might build their attacks against him. He becomes like a fortress with no gates, a castle with no weak walls, impenetrable not through external fortifications but through the elimination of all possible points of entry. The journey towards self-sufficiency begins with a brutal assessment of one's dependencies. Most individuals live in a web of reliances so complex and deeply ingrained that they cannot even perceive their own captivity. They depend on others for emotional validation, for financial security, for social status, for entertainment, for purpose, and even for their sense of identity. Each dependency represents a chain that binds them, a lever that others can pull to manipulate their behavior, and a vulnerability that can be exploited by those who understand the mechanics of human weakness. Consider the merchant who has built his entire business around a single client, believing himself successful while remaining utterly dependent on another's goodwill. His apparent prosperity masks a fundamental weakness that could be exploited or destroyed at any moment. Contrast this with the merchant who has diversified his operations, developed multiple income streams, and cultivated the skills necessary to rebuild from nothing if required. The first merchant may appear wealthier, but the second possesses true power through his independence and self-reliance. The destruction of the weak self requires more than simply identifying dependencies. It demands the systematic elimination of each source of vulnerability through practical action and psychological transformation. This process is neither comfortable nor quick, as it requires individuals to confront their deepest fears and most cherished illusions about themselves and their place in the world. The weak self clings to comfort, security, and the familiar, even when these very attachments become the sources of its ultimate destruction. Financial independence stands as perhaps the most obvious and immediately practical aspect of self-sufficiency. The person who depends on others for their economic survival can never truly speak their mind, pursue their authentic interests, or resist pressures that conflict with their values. They remain perpetually vulnerable to economic coercion, their choices constrained by the need to maintain the goodwill of those who control their livelihood. True financial independence extends beyond merely having money. It encompasses the skills, knowledge, and resources necessary to generate value and sustain oneself regardless of external circumstances. The path to financial self-sufficiency often begins with the development of valuable skills that cannot be easily replicated or outsourced. These skills become a form of portable wealth that cannot be confiscated or destroyed by others. The craftsman who has mastered his trade, the intellectual who has developed unique insights and knowledge, the entrepreneur who understands how to create value from nothing, each possesses a form of independence that transcends mere monetary wealth. Their abilities represent a renewable resource that can be deployed in various contexts and circumstances, providing security that no external institution or individual can guarantee. However, financial independence alone proves insufficient without emotional and psychological self-sufficiency. Many wealthy individuals remain profoundly dependent on others for validation, meaning, and purpose, making them vulnerable to manipulation despite their material resources. The truly self-sufficient individual has developed the capacity for emotional regulation, self-validation, and internal motivation that frees them from the need for external approval or support. They have learned to find satisfaction in their own thoughts, contentment in their own company, and motivation in their own values and goals. This emotional independence manifests in various ways throughout daily life. The self-sufficient person does not seek constant reassurance from others about their decisions or worth. They do not require external entertainment or stimulation to feel fulfilled. They can endure criticism, rejection, and isolation without losing their sense of purpose or direction. Most importantly, they have developed an internal compass that guides their actions based on their own principles rather than the expectations or demands of others. The development of intellectual self-sufficiency represents another crucial component of true independence. This involves the cultivation of critical thinking skills, broad knowledge, and the ability to analyze information independently without relying on others to interpret reality. The intellectually self-sufficient individual reads widely, thinks deeply, and forms their own opinions based on evidence and reasoning rather than accepting the conclusions of others wholesale. They become immune to manipulation through misinformation or emotional appeals because they possess the tools necessary to evaluate claims and arguments objectively. Intellectual independence also requires the courage to think unpopular thoughts and reach uncomfortable conclusions. The weak self seeks intellectual comfort through conformity, accepting popular opinions and conventional wisdom to avoid the difficulty of independent analysis and the social costs of disagreement. The strong self pursues truth regardless of its social acceptability, understanding that intellectual integrity represents a form of power that cannot be compromised or corrupted by external pressures. Physical self-sufficiency, while perhaps less immediately obvious than financial or emotional independence, plays a crucial role in overall autonomy. This encompasses not only physical health and fitness but also practical skills and capabilities that reduce dependence on others for basic survival needs. The person who can grow their own food, maintain their own shelter, defend themselves if necessary, and provide for their basic needs possesses a form of security that no external institution can guarantee or revoke. The cultivation of physical capabilities extends beyond mere survival skills to include the development of discipline, resilience, and the capacity to endure hardship without losing effectiveness or determination. Physical challenges serve as training grounds for mental and emotional strength, teaching individuals that they can overcome obstacles through their own efforts and persist in the face of adversity. This knowledge becomes a source of confidence that permeates all areas of life, reducing fear and increasing willingness to take necessary risks. The process of destroying the weak self inevitably involves confronting and overcoming fear, which serves as the primary obstacle to independence. Fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of isolation, fear of responsibility, these emotions keep individuals trapped in patterns of dependency and prevent them from pursuing the difficult path toward self-sufficiency. The weak self uses fear as an excuse to avoid growth, change, and the uncertainty that accompanies independence. Overcoming fear requires more than simple willpower, it demands a systematic approach to gradually expanding one's comfort zone and building evidence of personal capability. Each small victory over fear provides foundation for greater challenges, creating an upward spiral of confidence and competence. The individual learns through direct experience that most fears are unfounded or manageable, and that the consequences of facing fear are generally far less severe than the consequences of remaining trapped by it. The social dimension of self-sufficiency presents unique challenges in a world where human beings are naturally social creatures. True independence does not require complete isolation or the rejection of all human connections, but rather the ability to engage with others from a position of strength rather than need. The self-sufficient individual chooses relationships based on mutual value and genuine affection rather than dependency or desperation. They can walk away from toxic relationships without fear of loneliness or social isolation because they have developed the capacity for solitude and self-companionship. This social independence manifests in the ability to speak truthfully even when truth is unpopular, to maintain personal standards even when others pressure for compromise, and to pursue individual goals even when they conflict with group expectations. The socially self-sufficient person commands respect through their independence rather than seeking approval through conformity. They become valuable to others precisely because they cannot be easily controlled or manipulated, making their friendship and alliance genuinely meaningful rather than convenient. The creation of value through independence extends far beyond personal benefit to encompass broader social and economic contributions. The self-sufficient individual becomes a source of strength and stability for others rather than a drain on collective resources. They create rather than merely consume, contribute rather than merely take, and inspire rather than merely follow. Their independence enables them to take risks, pursue innovation, and challenge existing systems in ways that dependent individuals cannot afford to attempt. This value creation often manifests in entrepreneurial activities, artistic endeavors, intellectual contributions, or social leadership that would be impossible without the security that comes from self-sufficiency. The independent individual can afford to fail, to experiment, to pursue long-term goals that may not yield immediate rewards, precisely because they do not depend on others for survival or validation. This freedom enables them to create value in ways that dependent individuals cannot match. The strategic advantages of self-sufficiency become apparent in competitive situations where individuals or organizations vie for position, resources, or influence. The self-sufficient actor enters such competitions from a position of strength, with multiple options and fallback positions that their dependent competitors lack. They can negotiate more effectively because they genuinely possess the ability to walk away from unfavorable agreements. They can take calculated risks that might destroy dependent actors because they have the resources and capabilities necessary to recover from failure. This strategic advantage compounds over time as self-sufficient individuals accumulate resources, skills, and relationships based on mutual value rather than dependency. They become increasingly attractive as allies and partners precisely because their independence makes them reliable and valuable rather than burdensome. Organizations and individuals seek to associate with those who bring strength rather than weakness to relationships, creating opportunities that are unavailable to dependent actors. The psychological transformation that accompanies the journey towards self-sufficiency represents perhaps its most profound benefit. The individual who has successfully destroyed their weak self experiences a fundamental shift in their relationship with the world. They move from a reactive posture, where external circumstances dictate their emotional state and choices, to a proactive stance where they shape their environment according to their own vision and values. This shift brings a sense of agency and empowerment that permeates all aspects of life. The self-sufficient individual develops what might be called psychological immunity, the ability to maintain emotional equilibrium regardless of external circumstances. They become less affected by criticism, rejection, failure, or even success because their sense of self-worth derives from internal rather than external sources. This psychological stability enables them to make better decisions, maintain clearer judgment, and persist in pursuing long-term goals despite short-term setbacks or pressures. The elimination of dependency also brings clarity of purpose and direction that eludes those who remain trapped by external pressures and obligations. The self-sufficient individual can align their actions with their authentic values and goals rather than constantly compromising to maintain relationships or positions that they depend upon for survival or validation. This authenticity attracts others who share similar values while repelling those who might seek to exploit or manipulate, naturally creating a social environment that supports continued growth and independence. The practical implementation of self-sufficiency principles requires careful planning and systematic effort over extended periods. The journey cannot be rushed without creating new vulnerabilities or dependencies that undermine the ultimate goal. The wise individual begins by identifying their most critical dependencies and developing plans to gradually reduce or eliminate them without creating unnecessary hardship or risk. Financial independence typically requires years of disciplined saving, skill development, and strategic planning. The process might begin with eliminating debt, building emergency reserves, developing marketable skills, and creating multiple income streams. Each step reduces dependency on specific employers, institutions, or economic conditions while building the foundation for greater autonomy. The goal is not merely accumulation of wealth but the development of sustainable systems for generating value and meeting needs regardless of external economic conditions. Emotional self-sufficiency develops through practices such as meditation, self-reflection, goal setting, and gradual exposure to challenging situations that build confidence and resilience. The individual learns to find satisfaction in their own thoughts and achievements rather than seeking constant validation from others. They develop emotional regulation skills that enable them to maintain equilibrium during difficult periods without requiring external support or intervention. Intellectual independence grows through diverse reading, critical thinking practice, and the courage to form and express independent opinions despite social pressure. The individual becomes comfortable with uncertainty and complexity rather than seeking simple answers or authoritative guidance for every decision. They develop the ability to research, analyze, and conclude independently while remaining open to new information and perspectives that might modify their understanding. Physical self-sufficiency might involve learning practical skills such as basic mechanical repair, food production, medical first aid, and physical fitness. The goal is not complete isolation from modern conveniences and services but rather the confidence and capability to manage basic needs independently when necessary. This foundation of practical competence reduces anxiety and increases confidence while providing fallback options that enhance overall security. The social aspect of building self-sufficiency requires careful attention to relationship dynamics and the gradual establishment of boundaries that protect independence while maintaining valuable connections. The individual learns to distinguish between relationships based on mutual value and those rooted in dependency or exploitation. They develop the confidence to end relationships that drain their energy or compromise their values while investing in connections that support mutual growth and respect for independence. The development of self-sufficiency inevitably involves periods of isolation, difficulty, and uncertainty that test the individual's resolve and commitment to independence. The weak self will attempt to reassert itself during these challenging periods, offering the false comfort of returning to familiar dependencies rather than pushing through to genuine autonomy. The individual must remain vigilant against these internal pressures while maintaining faith in the long-term benefits of their efforts. These difficult periods serve as necessary tests that strengthen resolve and build evidence of personal capability. Each challenge overcome without external rescue or support proves that independence is possible and sustainable. The accumulation of such experiences creates unshakable confidence that no external force can truly destroy someone who has mastered themselves and their environment. The ultimate test of self-sufficiency comes during periods of external pressure or attack when others attempt to manipulate, coerce, or destroy the independent individual. Those who have achieved genuine self-sufficiency discover that they have become nearly immune to such attacks because they have eliminated the vulnerabilities that others typically exploit. They cannot be threatened with poverty because they possess the skills and resources to rebuild. They cannot be manipulated through emotional appeals because they do not depend on others for validation or happiness. They cannot be isolated or ostracized because they are comfortable in their own company and confident in their own judgment. This immunity to external attack does not result from defensive measures or protective barriers but from the elimination of the weaknesses that make such attacks effective. The fortress analogy becomes clear. Rather than building higher walls or stronger gates, the self-sufficient individual has eliminated the need for external defenses by removing all possible points of entry. Their strength comes not from what they can resist but from what no longer has the power to affect them. The value created by such individuals extends far beyond their personal benefit to encompass broader social and economic contributions. Self-sufficient individuals become sources of innovation, leadership, and stability that benefit entire communities and societies. Their independence enables them to take risks, challenge conventional wisdom, and pursue long-term goals that dependent individuals cannot afford to attempt. They become the entrepreneurs who create new industries, the artists who expand human expression, the thinkers who advance knowledge, and the leaders who guide others toward greater freedom and prosperity. The multiplication effect of self-sufficient individuals within a society creates a culture of independence and strength that benefits everyone. When individuals take responsibility for their own lives and well-being, they reduce the burden on collective resources while increasing the overall productive capacity of their community. Their example inspires others to pursue similar independence, creating an upward spiral of self-reliance and mutual support that strengthens the entire social fabric. The historical examples of individuals who achieved lasting influence and security invariably demonstrate these principles in action. Whether examining political leaders, business innovators, artistic creators, or intellectual pioneers, the pattern remains consistent. Those who achieved genuine power first mastered themselves and their circumstances through systematic development of self-sufficiency. Their external accomplishments flowed naturally from their internal independence rather than compensating for internal weaknesses or dependencies. These historical exemplars also demonstrate that self-sufficiency does not require the rejection of all cooperation or interdependence with others. Rather, it enables individuals to engage in relationships and collaborations from positions of strength rather than need. They choose their associations based on mutual benefit and shared values rather than desperation or dependency, creating more authentic and productive connections than those available to dependent individuals. The modern context presents both new opportunities and challenges for developing self-sufficiency. Technological advances have created possibilities for independence that were unimaginable in previous eras, allowing individuals to generate income, acquire knowledge, and maintain relationships across geographical and institutional boundaries. The same technologies that enable greater independence also create new forms of dependency and vulnerability that must be recognized and addressed. The digital economy offers unprecedented opportunities for creating location-independent income streams and building valuable skills through online resources. Individuals can develop expertise in high-demand areas, create digital products or services, and reach global markets without requiring significant capital investment or institutional support. The challenge lies in distinguishing between genuine independence and new forms of dependency on technological platforms, systems, or services that could be disrupted or withdrawn. The information abundance of the modern era enables rapid learning and skill development but also requires stronger critical thinking abilities to filter valuable knowledge from noise and misinformation. The self-sufficient individual must develop media literacy, research skills, and the intellectual discipline necessary to form independent judgments in an environment designed to influence and manipulate opinion. Social media and digital communication create new possibilities for meaningful connection while also generating new pressures for validation and conformity. The self-sufficient individual must learn to use these tools for genuine communication and value creation rather than falling into patterns of dependency on digital approval or entertainment. They must maintain their capacity for solitude and deep thinking despite the constant availability of external stimulation and distraction. The economic volatility and institutional uncertainty of the contemporary world make self-sufficiency more important than ever while also making it more challenging to achieve. Traditional sources of security such as long-term employment, pension systems, and stable institutions have become less reliable, forcing individuals to develop their own systems for managing risk and uncertainty. This reality makes the development of self-sufficiency not merely advantageous but essential for long-term security and prosperity. The path forward requires a balanced approach that recognizes both the opportunities and challenges of the modern environment. The individual seeking self-sufficiency must remain adaptable and responsive to changing circumstances while maintaining commitment to fundamental principles of independence and self-reliance. They must develop both traditional skills that provide security regardless of technological changes and modern capabilities that enable them to thrive in contemporary contexts. The cultivation of self-sufficiency becomes not merely a personal development goal but a form of insurance against an uncertain future. The individual who has developed multiple skills, diverse income streams, emotional resilience, physical capabilities, and intellectual independence possesses the adaptability necessary to thrive regardless of external changes or challenges. They become anti-fragile, growing stronger through stress and adversity rather than being weakened by it. The completion of this transformation, the destruction of the weak self and the establishment of genuine self-sufficiency represents more than personal achievement. It constitutes a form of social responsibility, as independent individuals become sources of strength and stability for their communities rather than drains on collective resources. They model possibility for others while contributing value that benefits everyone around them. The man who has destroyed his weak self through the systematic development of self-sufficiency has indeed made himself immune to destruction by others. Not through defensive measures or protective barriers, but through the elimination of the vulnerabilities that others might exploit. He has become like water that cannot be grasped, wind that cannot be captured, or fire that cannot be extinguished. His power lies not in his ability to dominate others but in his freedom from domination by anyone or anything external to himself. This freedom represents the ultimate form of power because it cannot be granted or revoked by others. It emerges from within through disciplined effort and systematic development of capability and character. Once achieved, it becomes self-reinforcing, creating opportunities for further growth and contribution that were impossible from positions of dependency and weakness. The value created by such independence extends far beyond personal benefit to encompass the advancement of human civilization itself. Every breakthrough in science, art, philosophy, or social organization has emerged from individuals who possess the independence necessary to think beyond conventional boundaries and pursue visions that others could not see or support. Their self-sufficiency enabled them to persist despite criticism, rejection, and often active opposition from those who benefited from existing systems and arrangements. The choice between dependency and independence represents perhaps the most fundamental decision that any individual faces. The path of dependency offers the false comfort of external support and validation at the cost of personal autonomy and authentic achievement. The path of independence demands sacrifice, effort, and the courage to face uncertainty without external guarantees, but it offers the genuine security and freedom that come from self-mastery and self-reliance. Those who choose independence and systematically develop self-sufficiency discover that they have gained far more than they sacrificed. They have traded the illusion of security for genuine strength, the comfort of conformity for the satisfaction of authenticity, and the ease of following for the fulfillment of leading their own lives according to their own values and vision. In the end, the principle that self-sufficiency is power represents more than a strategic insight or practical philosophy. It constitutes a fundamental truth about human nature and the sources of genuine security and fulfillment in an uncertain world. The man who destroys his weak self through the patient development of independence creates something that cannot be destroyed by others because it exists independent of their support, approval, or permission. He has become truly free, and in that freedom lies a form of power that no external force can touch or corrupt. This transformation remains available to anyone willing to undertake the difficult but rewarding journey from dependency to independence. It requires no special talents, inherited advantages, or favorable circumstances, only the commitment to systematic self-development and the courage to face the challenges that genuine independence inevitably involves. The rewards justify every sacrifice, the freedom compensates for every hardship, and the power that emerges from such independence creates value that extends far beyond the individual to benefit all who encounter it. The choice stands before every person in every generation: remain dependent and vulnerable, or undertake the work necessary to achieve genuine self-sufficiency and the unassailable power that flows from it. Those who choose independence and persist in its development join the ranks of the truly free, creating value that cannot be destroyed and achieving security that cannot be threatened by external forces. They become living proof that the destruction of weakness leads to the creation of strength, and that self-sufficiency represents the highest form of power available to human beings.